What if I told you that the supply chain crisis we're living through wasn't an accident? Think about it for a second. You place an Amazon order. Maybe it's for something simple. A new coffee maker, a birthday gift, a part you need for your side business. You hit buy now and everything feels routine. But somewhere between Shanghai and Long Beach, your package just disappears. Or you walk into your local car dealership looking for that Ford you've been eyeing, the same model you saw last month, except now it's $10,000 more expensive. Not because the engine changed, not because it got faster, just because it crossed an ocean during the wrong week. These things aren't happening in a vacuum. They're not just about ships and tariffs and factories grinding to a halt. What's unfolding right now is a strategic, deliberate disruption, a global chess move where everyday Americans are the ones paying the price. And for those of you watching who've lived through economic downturns, job losses, trade disputes, you know the signs, you've seen the ripple effects. But this time it's different. This isn't just policy, it's personal. Because it's not just about goods. It's about trust, mommy, and whether or not we can count on the systems we've built. So today I want to take you beyond the headlines, past the buzzwords, into the heart of what's really happening and why. Because once you understand how precision this disruption truly is, you'll never look at a delayed shipment or an empty shelf the same way again. Let's rewind the clock. April 20, 1925. Everything started to shift. Imagine standing on the deck of a cargo ship off the coast of Shanghai. Behind you, stacks of containers, each packed with goods destined for American homes and businesses. Ahead of you, nothing but open water and a growing line of ships waiting to move. Now zoom out. You're not alone. You're one of over 24 ships stuck in limbo outside ports in Ningbo, Shenzhen, or Long Beach. And back on land, people are waiting. Customers, store owners, even assembly line workers. Except no one knows when or if those containers will arrive. By early April, over 71,000 containers were stranded in Chinese ports. Some sat untouched for more than 10 days. Port congestion on the West Coast, especially in Los Angeles, climbed it to the highest level since the COVID era. At one point, 27 vessels were anchored offshore, waiting their turn to unload. And the delays? They weren't measured in hours anymore. They were stretching to nearly 4 full days. For one small business owner I spoke with, who runs a seasonal home goods store out of Denver, those delays weren't just frustrating, they were devastating. A single shipment stuck in transit during the tariff hike meant $1 million in lost revenue and missed their spring launch entirely. And here's the thing, it wasn't luxury goods or niche imports. It was patio furniture, the kind that ends up in suburban backyards across America. Gone. Now, on paper, this might just look like a hiccup in logistics. But the truth is, when containers stop moving, the entire economy starts to wobble. Truckers get rescheduled. Warehouse space sits empty or overflows. Retailers miss cycles. And for consumers, prices jump and choices shrink. I've seen this firsthand in my own neighborhood. Last month, I walked into a big box store looking for outdoor gear. Half the shelves were filled with empty hooks and placeholder labels, delayed due to shipping. It felt familiar, but different. Not like the panic of 2020. This time, it felt calculated. And that's what we need to talk about. This isn't just about port congestion or slow boats. It's about a shift in how global supply and power is being wielded. And it's affecting far more than just what's in stock. It's redefining the rules of trade altogether. So the next time someone says, it's just shipping, remember, that shipping lane is the artery of modern life. And right now, it's being squeezed on purpose. But let's go even deeper. Because while ports jammed up, something else happened quietly, 35,000 feet in the sky. Let's talk about the Boeing freeze and what it really means when a global superpower goes silent. Here's a question most people never ask. What does it really mean when a country stops buying airplanes? Not just any airplanes. Boeing aircraft, one of the most iconic symbols of American innovation and export strength. In early April, with no press release, no press conference, and no official warning, China suspended all new Boeing deliveries indefinitely. No accusations, no dramatic headlines, just silence, and a subtle economic chill that wiped out nearly $28.4 billion from Boeing's valuation in just 48 hours. To most, this may have seemed like a business decision, but for those of us who followed global trade, we know this wasn't about airplane specs or delivery schedules. This was about leverage. According to leaked documents, this move was a direct response to escalating U.S. tariffs, a precise counterstrike in an economic chess match. And China chose Boeing not just because it's big, but because it's symbolic. This is the aircraft that represents American industrial dominance, the pride of our export economy, and a staple of thousands of high-skilled jobs across the country. Now, I want you to think back for a moment. This isn't the first time aviation has been caught in the crossfire. Back in 2018, during the earlier phase of U.S.-China trade tensions, there were whispers of China considering a similar pause. Airbus orders increased. Talks of diversifying suppliers quietly filled boardrooms in Beijing. But this time, they didn't just talk, they acted. And the impact? It ripples far beyond Boeing. Think about the suppliers, the parts manufacturers in Wichita, the engineers in Seattle, the small machine shops in Ohio making components that go into each aircraft. When one Boeing order disappears, an entire supply chain trembles. To me, this was the moment things shifted. Because when a country stops ordering planes, they're not just delaying transportation, they're sending a message. And that message was clear. You escalate, we isolate. It's a quiet kind of power play, but no less potent than a blockade or a military exercise. Honestly, it hit me differently this time. Not just because I fly often or care about the industry, but because I realized how deeply interconnected we all are. How a decision made in Beijing can send shockwaves through an American household, a factory, a college savings account. And that's why this story matters. Because this isn't just about grounded planes, it's about grounded opportunity. Now, while the skies were quiet, something even more dramatic was unfolding down here on the ground. Let's look at what happened when U.S. retailers started canceling shipments mid-transit, and how that moment may have marked the start of an entirely new retail era. Have you ever heard of a company canceling a shipment after it's already on the ocean? It sounds unbelievable, right? But that's exactly what happened in early April. Retail giants, companies like Amazon and Five Below, started canceling product orders mid-transit while the cargo was already en route from China. It's like ordering food, watching it get delivered on the app, and then halfway there deciding you don't want it anymore. Except we're not talking about a pizza. We're talking about millions of dollars in inventory floating halfway across the Pacific. Let's take Five Below as a real-world example. In a public filing, they confirmed they canceled over $67 million worth of merchandise, products that were already packed, labeled, and in transit. That's nearly 11% of their entire second quarter inventory gone, not delayed. Why? Because the cost of bringing those goods in suddenly tripled due to freight hikes and new tariffs. And when you're selling low-cost items like $5 toys or school supplies, you just can't afford to pay 3 times the shipping cost and still make a profit. Joel Anderson, the CEO of Five Below, said it best during an earnings call: "We couldn't justify paying 3 times the landed costs on items already facing margin pressure." And this isn't just a big business problem. It trickles down. Smaller sellers, who depend on Amazon's fulfillment network, were told to pause all shipments from China. Some lost tens of thousands of dollars overnight. One small e-commerce brand owner told me, "Our inventory was boxed, ready, and waiting at the port, but the freight company canceled. We didn't even get a choice." And here's what makes it worse. This kind of disruption doesn't just affect one order. It throws off your entire calendar. Spring products arrive in summer. Back to school arrives after school starts. And meanwhile, storage fees rack up, cash flow dries up, and customers lose trust. As someone who has worked in product development, I can tell you timing is everything. When that rhythm breaks, it's not easy to recover. It's like missing a beat in a song you've rehearsed for months. And retailers now face a painful choice: eat the cost or lose the customer. This isn't just logistics, it's identity. Retailers built their brands on speed, volume, and affordability. When all three collapse, they're not just rethinking supply chains, they're rethinking who they are. And just when you think the story couldn't get more personal, we take a look at the one thing many Americans depend on more than retail: their cars. Because when the assembly line starts stalling and that $12 chip goes missing, the cost isn't just financial, it's deeply human. What can a tiny $12 chip do? More than you'd think. Because without it, a $70,000 electric truck doesn't roll off the line. Without it, a plant with 2,000 workers goes quiet. Without it, America's auto industry starts to stall. In mid-April, Ford's plant in Wayne, Michigan was forced to halt production on its flagship F-150 Lightning. Why? Because of a shortage in microcontrollers, many of which are still sourced from factories in Shenzhen, China. This wasn't an isolated incident. GM's Spring Hill facility in Tennessee reported a 60% slowdown in battery module production due to missing capacitors and inverter components. And across the industry, nearly 41,000 vehicles were lost in just 1 week, amounting to an estimated $1.6 billion into delayed revenue. Now, if this sounds familiar, it's because we've been here before. Remember the 2021 chip shortage? That moment when dealership lots sat half empty and used car prices skyrocketed? Well, this time it's not a global pandemic. It's geopolitics. This time the delays aren't just frustrating, they're strategic. And here's the part that hit me hardest. This isn't just a supply issue, it's a human issue. When Ford shuts down a line, it doesn't just inconvenience a few managers. It sends home thousands of union workers. Families miss paychecks. Communities lose economic momentum. All because of a missing part that could fit in the palm of your hand. Kristen Jichik from the Center for Automotive Research said it plainly: you can't run a modern assembly line without a $12 chip. Let that sink in. We've built an industry, an economy, and in many ways a society on top of a supply chain that he assumes everything will always arrive on time. And now that assumption is breaking down. Even worse, plants are now being forced to cannibalize other vehicles for parts, stripping one car to finish another. It's a move we haven't seen since the early days of the pandemic, but this time, there's no virus, there's no lockdown. This is about control and who gets to push the pause button on America's production lines. As someone who grew up in a town where auto jobs meant everything, this feels personal. It's not just about cars, it's about pride, stability, and the sense that if we put in the work, we'll be okay. But now, even that feels uncertain. And while automakers scramble for parts, others are searching for entire new routes. So where do we go when China is no longer the factory of the world? Let's talk about Vietnam, India, and Mexico, and why the next chapter in supply chains is anything but simple. What if moving supply chains out of China isn't the silver bullet we hope for? We've all heard it: diversify, shift manufacturing to Vietnam, India, or Mexico. Sounds smart on paper, but when you zoom in, the picture gets messy. Let's start with Vietnam. Yes, it's a rising star. Labor is affordable and factories are popping up fast, but there's a catch. Ports are limited, roads are narrow, and power grids struggle to keep up. A single traffic jam outside Haiphong can delay thousands of containers. And that's not just a theoretical problem. In 23, a global apparel brand faced 2 weeks of delay because of flooding, something Vietnam's underdeveloped infrastructure just couldn't handle. Now shift to India. It's massive, ambitious, and home to brilliant engineers. But manufacturing at scale? That's still a work in progress. Roads can be unreliable, red tape is thick, and internal logistics feel like a maze. Even Apple, with its deep pockets and high tolerance for risk, has had fits and starts in trying to move production to India. A former supply manager I spoke with called it like building a spaceship in the jungle. Mexico offers proximity. For U.S. companies, that's huge. Shorter shipping times, NAFTA legacy benefits, shared time zones. It should be a slam dunk. But cartels, energy shortages, and underfunded ports paint a different picture. One mid-sized electronics company moved half its production to Monterrey and had to halt work twice in a year due to power outages. That kind of risk adds up fast. Here's a map worth visualizing. Instead of one giant choke point, like Shanghai, we now face a constellation of small ones. Each new country adds complexity, new customs, new labor laws, new relationships to build from scratch. We're not replacing one engine. We're trying to build an entirely new machine, mid-flight. Personally, I think the idea of shifting away from China is necessary, but it's no quick fix. It requires patience, investment, and a long-term mindset. And let's be honest, most companies still chase quarterly profits, not decade-long visions. That's the real friction here. So while headlines talk about a China plus one strategy, the real story is slower, bumpier, and much more human. It's about learning from missteps, listening to local partners, and building trust over time. And speaking of trust, let's talk about one area where the stakes are even higher. Rare earths. Because if you think moving t-shirts is hard, try securing the minerals that power our defense systems and electric cars. Let's dive into that next. What if the most powerful weapon in today's trade war isn't oil or steel, but dust? Not just any dust, rare earth elements. Tiny materials, invisible to most of us, yet essential to nearly everything we rely on. From electric vehicles to fighter jets, from smartphones to wind turbines. The future runs on these 17 obscure minerals. And here's the kicker, over 70% of them come from one place. China. Now, let's slow down for a second. What exactly are rare earths? They're not rare in the sense that they're scarce in nature. Some are as common as copper, but they're rarely found in concentrations high enough to extract economically. And the mining, refining, and separating process? It's messy, toxic, and incredibly complex. That's why so few countries have bothered with it. China did, and now they dominate every step of the supply chain. Need magnets for your EV motor? China. Need sensors for your missile guidance system? China again. Even the F-35 fighter jet, one of the most advanced aircraft in the world, contains over 400 pounds of rare earth materials. And this isn't just about economics. It's about leverage. In 2010, during a diplomatic dispute with Japan, China quietly blocked rare earth exports. Prices skyrocketed. Supply chains froze. It was a wake-up call, but not loud enough. Fast forward to today, and we still haven't solved the problem. The U.S. has one major rare earth mine in Mountain Pass, California. But guess what? We send that ore back to China for processing. So technically, even our mine depends on their refinery. Now, personally, I find this terrifying. Because when a single nation can flip a switch and disrupt the production of everything from Teslas to Tomahawks, we've got a serious vulnerability. And sure, there are efforts underway. Australia's investing. The U.S. Department of Defense is funding new processing sites. But these things take time. Years, even decades. Here's what I believe. We need to treat rare earth independence not just as a trade issue, but as national security. And we need to get creative. Recycling, innovation, new extraction methods. Because betting our entire clean energy future and defense strategy on one supplier, that's not just risky, it's reckless. Now as we look toward the bigger picture, ports jammed, factories stalling, raw materials under lock and key, we have to ask, are we ready for the new trade map that's forming? Let's bring it all home in our final section. Let's take a breath. Because everything we've talked about, the ports, the planes, the missing microchips and rare earths, it all leads us to one undeniable truth. The global trade map has been redrawn, and whether we're ready or not, we're living in it. Let's quickly look back. We saw ports from Shanghai to Long Beach choked with cargo, containers stacking up like forgotten toys. We saw Boeing orders suspended, not because of faulty engines, but as a strategic message. We watched as retail giants lost millions, while smaller sellers simply disappeared. We traced how a $12 chip could silence entire auto plants, leaving thousands without work. And we realized that our plan B, moving production to Vietnam, India, Mexico, isn't quite ready for prime time. Most importantly, we uncovered the invisible leash around our necks. Rare earths, mined and refined by one dominant player. This isn't just policy, it's personal. It affects how much we pay at the store, how fast we get the things we need, where jobs are created or lost, and who holds the power when the world gets tense. Now, I don't believe in fear-mongering, but I do believe in facing the facts with clarity and courage. Because this moment is a chance to rethink how we build, trade, and prepare. If you're a business owner, maybe it's time to review your supply risks. If you're a policymaker or investor, consider where resilience fits in, not just efficiency. And if you're a parent, a teacher, or simply a citizen, start conversations about where things come from and what it takes to keep them moving. This is no longer a distant issue. This is our doorstep. So here's my question for you. How has this trade war affected you or your business? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Let's learn from each other. Let's build smarter together. And if this video made you think, like it, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to prepare. Someone in logistics, in manufacturing, in government, or just someone who still wonders why their package is taking so long. Because the world is shifting. The question isn't if we adapt, it's how well we do it, together.